In 2021, Puerto Rico handed its broken power grid to a company that promised to fix it. 3 years later, that company is filing for bankruptcy. This isn't a scandal, it's a math problem. When you buy something broken with borrowed money, you don't fix it, you inherit the hole, and if the deal's built to pull cash out, not put repair in, in 2021, Puerto Rico turned its broken power plants over to a firm that swore it could make them solvent. 3 years later, that firm is bankrupt too, not stolen, not neglected, just mathematically doomed from the start. They bought the grid with borrowed money, no skin in the game, only debt on their books. To survive, they had to pull cash out of the wires, not put it in. Every dollar earned went to service loans, nothing left for transformers, poles, or storm hardening. The deal wasn't broken by greed, it was broken by design, a loop where fixing the asset meant losing the ability to pay, and that loop? It's not unique to Puerto Rico, it's the quiet engine behind too many public-private takeovers, where the buyer wins only by running the asset into the ground. Before the handover, PREPA was already broken, $9 billion in debt. Hurricane Maria didn't just knock out power, it exposed decades of neglect. The grid wasn't fragile, it was frayed at every seam. Transformers overheating, substations rusting, transmission lines sagging like old rope. These weren't power plants waiting to be turned on. They were money pits with smokestacks. No one expected them to make money. Everyone knew they'd keep losing it. The island didn't need an operator who'd profit. It needed one who'd stop the bleeding. But that's not what the deal was built for. Genera PR walked in with a check for $1 billion, took over the plants, signed the 10-year lease. Sounds like a rescue, right? But that billion wasn't theirs, it was borrowed. They bought Puerto Rico's broken grid with a loan, no equity, no skin in the game, just debt, layered on debt. The moment they signed, the risk shifted, not to them, but to the people still waiting for the lights to come back on. Because when you're paid to extract, not to endure, resilience isn't in the contract, it's an afterthought. And afterthoughts don't keep the grid alive. They didn't pay for the plants with cash, they borrowed to buy them. Bond markets funded the deal, and from the first minute, interest started accruing. The plan was simple on paper. Electricity sales would cover operations and debt service, no margin for error, no rainy day fund. If a transformer failed, with AVO-E. If fuel costs spiked, if demand dipped, the lenders still got paid first. The clock wasn't just ticking, it was counting down to a choice. Keep the lights on or default. And in a system where cash flow is king, the operator had every incentive to skim, not to invest. Math. The financial model assumed oil would stay cheap. It didn't. It assumed 98% of customers would pay their bills. They didn't. It assumed the grid would need little repair. It needed constant, expensive fixes. These weren't minor errors. They were foundational flaws built into the deal from day one. Genera PR wasn't just taking on debt, it was betting that reality would conform to a spreadsheet. When fuel prices spiked and solar adoption grew, the model collapsed under its own weight. The operator had no skin in the game, only debt to service, so they cut costs where they could, maintenance, upgrades. Resilience. The plants kept running, barely, but the system grew more fragile with every passing month. This wasn't a failure of execution, it was a failure of design. The structure rewarded cash extraction, not long-term stability, and when the bills came due, there was nothing left to pay them with. They took over the plants with no skin in the game. Genera PR's balance sheet showed zero equity. Only debt piled on top of debt. Every dollar earned went straight to creditors, not to fixing turbines or replacing rusted pipes. When revenue dipped, they didn't cut costs, they cut maintenance, a single deferred wait. Repair on Unit 3 at a gear led to a 72-hour blackout in Ponce. The worse the service got, the fewer customers paid their bills on time. Less cash meant higher interest penalties. Higher penalties meant even less for upkeep. It wasn't neglect. It was the contract working exactly as designed. Genera wasn't hired to fix the grid, it was hired to pull cash out of it. The deal gave its owners zero equity, only debt. That meant every dollar saved on maintenance went straight to bond payments. No upside for improving the plants, only downside if they failed, so they ran them lean, deferred. repairs, stretched fuel contracts. When Hurricane Fiona hit in 2022, the system had no buffer, no reserves, no margin. The math wasn't flawed, it was working exactly as designed. Extract now, pay later, let someone else clean up the wreckage. That's not mismanagement, that's the incentive structure. And it's baked into too many public asset sales. Genera didn't fail because it was corrupt. It failed because its contract rewarded cash extraction, not grid repair. The company took on debt to buy the plants, then used plant revenue to service that debt, leaving nothing for maintenance. Every dollar paid to lenders was a dollar not spent on transformers, poles, or training. When Hurricane Fiona hit in 2022, the system couldn't withstand stress it was never designed to endure. The math was simple. If your profit depends on minimizing spending, the asset will decay. No villain needed, just a structure that mistook financial engineering for operational wardship. Puerto Rico didn't get a private operator, it got a leveraged shell, and when the shell cracked, the lights went out. This isn't an anomaly. It's the predictable outcome when you hand critical infrastructure to entities with no skin in the game, only leverage to extract. The lesson isn't about bad actors, it's about why debt can't fix debt when the buyer has no incentive to make the asset last. Subscribe for deep dives into how systems break when incentives collide with reality.